Okay, Rupert, David Letterman hasn't been on CBS for years, yet his merchandise is still killing it. The only place that you can get official Letterman, Late Show with David Letterman merchandise is right here at the Hello Deli. How do people get this merchandise other than coming in here? Obviously, you want to come in here. If you're in New York,
Right.
come to the Ed Sullivan Theater, come to the Hello Deli, get yourself a Paul Schaefer sandwich or something else, and then buy some merchandise. If people can't make it to New York, what's the best way to get some of this merchandise?
Well, they can get on my website, hello-deli.com.
Yep.
And order it there.
Now, do you pack that yourself? Do you pack it, this merchandise, and send it off to people yourself?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
If people ask you to add onions to the order, will you add onions to the order?
Absolutely.
That sounds great. The Hello Deli is the sponsor of the Letterman podcast. We are so grateful for that, Rupert. We're so grateful for you. And
My pleasure.
on a personal note, thank you for the years and years and years of entertainment that you have brought, not just America, I'm
Thank you.
Canadian, but brought the world. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for watching.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dave Rogowski here, congratulating the Letterman podcast and Mike Chisholm on the 1-year anniversary of the podcast, the Letterman podcast. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk for almost 2 hours about myself. I enjoyed it, and I enjoy many other podcast episodes with the writers and the other folks that were involved in the show. Keep up the good work. There's only one person as obsessed with the show as you are, and you know who that is. All right, keep it up.
All right, once again, welcome to the Letterman podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. I am so excited for this episode. The intro for this is going to be a little bit different. The next two episodes that we have coming out are awesome. We may have a bonus one that comes out this week or next week. It all depends. But the next two Fridays, the next normal incarnations of the Letterman podcast are good for a variety of reasons. Number one, if people are watching it as they come out, and there's a few thousand, I guess, who are doing that now, which is really gratifying. Thank you very much for the early adopters. But it's the writer strike just happened. So right now we are in May of 2023, and we're at the time where there's a writer strike. This happens every decade or so, it seems, and has ever since I was a boy. I can remember writer strikes when I was a boy. I'm really excited for this writer strike. Not because any of my friends, a lot of these people are friends now, and the writers are some of my very favorite episodes. I love having Letterman writers and former Letterman writers on here. The next two episodes feature Letterman writers. And right now is a time where we, in my opinion, need to support the Writers Guild of America. We need to support television and movie, film, all sorts of writers, creatives, people who come up with these ideas. And the reason I'm excited that it's happening right now is because we are on the precipice of unprecedented times when it comes to content. AI is showing up, and in the last writer strike, I believe streaming was becoming part of the equation. So whenever we have, and I think maybe the one before that, it had to do with new formats, of old content and things like that. It's important. I fully believe that we need to support these writers. I've looked a little bit about AI. We're in the infancy of AI being creative, and I think that it's a good time right now for the writers to solidify their place, because at the end of the day, artists needs to get paid. Carter Bays, former Letterman writer, also wrote on MTV and then went on to create the show How I Met Your Mother. Fantastic example of a creative in the business that ended up being able to make a nice living from it. Not all writers can say the same. In fact, a lot can't. And when we look at AI, I don't know very much about this. I'm a buffoon in most areas. From what I can see, though, what AI does now is that they will go and these programs will go and they will scour the internet. They will come up with different ideas, mix them and match them together. It understands how tone is involved and things like that. And they will come up with something that appears to be a new idea. In my opinion, the best writers out there are the ones who come up with something that's brand new. Something that can't be scoured for and found, something that comes from the whimsy of the muse, of inspiration. And at the end of the day, if we don't continue to create a place where some of these people, these creatives, can make a living. In fact, the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. We as a society are in trouble when it comes to art, when it comes to creative endeavors. So right now, as the writers have gone on strike, if I can help in any way, shape, or form, get your message out there, I want to do that. Now, this message with Carter, or this episode with Carter, was recorded a few weeks ago, but we did talk about the looming potential strike. We are now in strike mode right now for the writers. And I'm very excited to present this episode with Carter Bays. We talk about everything, First, we talk about his new novel, The Mutual Friend, and how that's going and how that might be adapted into something. We talk about his, he was part of a comedy team with Craig. He came along and wrote on Letterman. They became mailbag kingpins. They wrote a lot of mailbag segments for the Late Show. So we talked about all of that and had just a fantastic conversation. But at the end of the day, we also talked about this looming strike, and I wanted to shoot a different intro today, because if you're watching it real time, let's do what we can to support the writers, even if it's a matter of just sending support on social media, that kind of thing. I can promise you, as the strike goes on, at the beginning of it, there's lots of footage and different things. And by the way, if you're going to be a union that strikes, the comedy writers are the ones that come up with the best signs. I will tell you, there's some clever signs out there. Maybe we'll do some things moving forward with some of these amazing writers that are friends of our show, and talk about some of these signs that are out there. But let's support these creatives. Let's support these artists in unprecedented times. Get them a deal so they can continue to do what we, the viewing audience, love so much, and that is taking in new, fresh content, or old content that it's just shown a little bit different and it's driven into the ground. Both of those things are things that we love as an audience. So yeah, on behalf of everybody involved with the Letterman podcast, all you, the whole crew, everybody here, we're all in agreement, right? Right. There's nobody here. Thank you very much to all of the writers that are out there. We wish you the best of luck while you're on the picket line, and may this be a very short strike. At the end of the day, I'm still doing what I'm doing here, trying to come up with these great episodes. This week and next week are kind of connected, or they've got a little bit of synergy to them. Yeah, without further ado, the Letterman podcast is proud to present Carter Bays. Here we are. Carter Bays, thank you so much for taking time out of your extremely busy schedule to come on the Letterman podcast. I am stoked about this today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love my time working at Letterman. I love talking about Letterman. So yeah, this is great. Very excited.
It's cool. And I know that you spend a lot of time talking about things that aren't Letterman. We're going to do that today too, because I want to provide context. And I think that there is a really cool lineage over the body of work that is David Letterman and company. You're a 75 baby, right? You're
75.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm 76. Okay, so we're both Gen Xers.
Yep.
And I love our viewpoint of the Letterman lineage. Like, I'll never forget. We talked about this with Grossman the first time he came on. Dave brings Grossman on and identifies him as a writer for the show. And I'm, as a viewer, looking at him going, there's a guy who's like my age and he's writing, and back in the day, it was like people like, O'Donnell and some of these other people, Kellison's, Spike Fairstein, like people who are a little bit older, who create this entertainment, and we're the viewer. And then you get to see people that are your age that are actually contributing to the machine.
Yeah,
and
it's exciting for a minute, and then you start to feel really old, and you start realizing like, oh no, I've grown up. What happened? Right.
Yeah. And I love the folks who have, like, there was the initial run of writers, and then a bunch of them went off to The Simpsons and to you think about Paul Sims and some of the stuff he did, and there's countless other examples of this. And then you see the Gen Xers, who basically lasted to the tail end of the legacy, or even right to the end, and then you go and see what they do. And I just love the fact that I get to talk to you a little bit about that, because wrote for Letterman you and Craig wrote for Letterman for what, 5 years?
Yes, 4.5 years. We rounded up to 5, but yeah.
writing team with Craig Thomas. I want to talk to you about that. But then, when that run was over, went on to create one of the most successful sitcoms in the modern age, How I Met Your Mother, and the spinoff and all of that stuff after Letterman. We've heard this many times, that sometimes writers, like, people will get Late Night with David Letterman or The Late Show with David Letterman on their resume, and it opens up a lot of doors. Did you find that, or were you grinding it kind of on the side, and the work ethic that you learned kind of at Letterman helped lead to some of these other amazing projects?
Oh, I think it's all of those. I think for sure there was there was a perceived conveyor belt from the writers' room of Letterman out to Los Angeles. I think, like, the producers used to joke about, like, they all eventually leave and go write for The Simpsons and get BMWs, so it was definitely. But I also, at the same time, it was, the things I learned at the show, working at the show, and that Craig learned, I think he would tell you the same thing, were just had everything to do with everything that came afterwards for us, because we really did. It was such an. I always refer to it as my comedy MFA, because I wasn't really, I was an English major in college, but, like, there's no, comedy writing wasn't really something that I ever aspired to or did. I mean, I like to, like, joke around with my friends, but I wasn't like, I wasn't a stand-up comedian. I'd done a little bit of improv in high school, just enough to learn that I'm not a performer and that's not for me. But so as a result, like, I think, I always loved comedy, and I loved, I loved, films and TV, that like, I like, comedy was something I always adored, but didn't really know how to do. I think nobody gets good at that job, at making comedy, and I'm not even saying that I really got very good at it, but I got as good as I possibly could get, I think, with the skills that I had. The only way you do it is by putting your material out in front of an audience on a regular basis, over and over again, until you figure out, like, first of all, you figure out what works, and you also develop that churning thing in the furnace of your belly, that, like, you don't like hearing silence after a joke, and it scares you so much that, like, it makes you, like, fight through to, like, can I make this joke any funnier? Is there anything I can tweak here to make it just a little bit better? And Letterman, it was 4.5 years of that, just over and over again, and having to constantly come up with new material. And for someone who's not a performer, like, this was I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have that, because I wouldn't have had it any other way. Like just the, usually, I feel like stand up and improv are two careers that lead very well into comedy writing, just because, for that very reason. Like, when you're doing stand up, you're going up in front of an audience every day, and you're fighting that dragon, and facing the terrifying possibility that all your jokes will tank and no one will laugh. And and that's how you get good at it. There's no shortcut to it. It's like going to the gym. Like, you just have to build up those muscles, and that, for someone who's not a performer, doesn't want to go up and do stand up in front of a mic, or do improv, that's what this was. So I think that I learned how to write a joke from David Letterman and from the people I work with.
That was so well put. You're good at this, and it makes sense that you would be good at this. I love the conversation already. I guess the first place, let's go back to, you came on, and I love the idea of writing teams. I want to talk to Craig. And then maybe at some point, it would be cool to have you both on here and maybe start talking about this stuff. I know you gave Don Don's got a big list of stuff that you guys did, and it would be fun to dig into some of these things and go through them together with both of your perspectives.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm excited to see it. Yeah, Don's putting together my reel. He's putting together all the stuff that Craig and I wrote together. He's assembling all those videos, and we're gonna go back and watch them after 25 years away from it, so it'll be fun.
I need to know what happened first. You meet Craig, you guys get hired on, you start with the Late Show, meet him afterwards. Tell our viewers, because I mean, there's so many different ways for the unlikely path to being a writer at Late Show. Because a lot of people came in without thinking that they were going to be a comedy writer and ended up being a pretty darn good one. Great example of that here. How did it start? Tell us the story.
I mean, it was, we were very, 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 very lucky. I think that there's no other way to say it. Like Craig and I met in college. We were in a band together, actually. We were in a 9-piece rhythm and blues soul band. Like we played all like Memphis soul, like Otis Redding, Sam and Dave. Like we were obsessed with that kind of music and
wow.
like the whole like Stax Records. Like it was something that like it was a small obsession that we had that like independently. And then but like we started this band. And
what was it called? And what were your roles in the band?
I don't want to say the name of the band. The band is so like, now I mean I'll say it now that you've asked, but I didn't pick this name, but I don't know how this, but it was the fact that it was like 9 dudes in this band. We were called the Testosterone. That was the name of the band. I don't know why, and I'm so ashamed of that name. But anyway, it was a great band. We actually like I am proud of the music we made. It was really fun. We had a horn section.
Did you play it? Like, did you play? Did you sing? Did you what did
I was
you do
the singer, and Craig played the drums.
Awesome.
And like it was such a big band. There was such a crowd that we were friends and we knew each other, but it wasn't like we didn't get really super close that whole year being in that band together. But then the summer, that was our junior year, and the summer between junior and senior year, Craig and I both applied to this internship, which was for MTV. And we worked we spent the summer just a completely formative. So like the most important summer of my life basically was living in New York City. I lived like right outside of my grandparents' house, and Craig lived he was staying at his mom's house in Long Island, but we were commuting into New York City at the MTV headquarters in Times Square at 1515 Broadway in Times Square. And we were working in and really it was just like my priorities were, I love New York. I want to find a way to live in New York for a summer, because I'm thinking about like graduation's coming. I want to see if I could like be a New Yorker.
If I can make it there, I can make it anywhere.
Yeah. And I saw this bullet. I saw this like, I mean, this dates it. This is how long ago it was. It was a printout, like a Xerox little flyer, thumbtacked to the cork board in the career center at Wesleyan University. And like this is when, before this is back when things you would find these things on cork boards basically. And we both saw the same flyer and we both applied to it, and it was MTV. I loved MTV. I loved music. I was born in 1975. It's like
this is the heyday of MTV. I would say the peak of MTV, because it's like just before the Napsters and all that stuff. It was a juggernaut still.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was the feeling that maybe it had like just peaked like a few years back, and now it was kind of like, because this was in the
Real World had started
in like the sort of, because in the 1990s there was like this MTV identity crisis where they stopped playing videos so much and were focusing on, they had like the Real World and Road Rules and Singled Out, the game show. And they were really, there was sort of this overall feeling, and this, so when we arrived, we were working at in the development department, which is the department that cooks up new shows. That's what development is. You're developing the new shows to show on the show. And when we arrived, MTV was in this identity crisis where they wanted to feel like, they wanted to, keep their brand going and expand their brand and get bigger and bigger, because that's what brands want to do. But also they were veering away from just showing music videos, which
Yes.
you know, it was kind of bittersweet because it was like I think music videos were it's such a beautiful art form, and I wish that was as I mean it's such a great like medium of just like this 4-minute short film, and the things that were done with it were really revolutionary
Do
and
you have any favorite music videos of all time, Carter?
oh, I mean, I don't know where to begin. You know, I just saying that reminded me of the like the OK Go videos because I feel like they're the last. Those are the last music videos that really like felt like sort of dazzling and like did more with it than just show you the band singing the song. Like I don't know if
For
the like
sure.
what's that one song This Too Shall Pass or
Yep.
yeah, I think it was called you know the yeah, I don't know. So anyway, I'm getting off topic.
No, because it was a cult. Growing up for us, that was formative. Like I think about my favorite bands and the ones that are nostalgic that have stayed with me since then. Like I'm a huge Radiohead fan. The video for Just
Oh,
was
forget it.
like it
Oh,
was
where
it
everyone's
was
lying on the ground, like
yes,
the
sir.
sidewalk. Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
There you
Now,
go.
okay. Now you're unlocking the doors in my brain, and like Radiohead's videos were always terrific. Like there was like High and Dry. I remember was
Yes, with the filling of the yes.
yeah, and the oh no,
Oh, that was No Surprises.
that was No Surprises.
That
Yes.
was No
Oh my God.
Surprises.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was great. And Karma Police with the guy being chased by the car.
Right?
Whoa, that was like, and it's like one should go watch the Karma Police video. That was the kind of stuff that people were doing, and it was so just like I don't know. You don't have that unabashed like artistic spirit in things. I mean, I feel like certain shows like Atlanta, I feel like kind of come close to that like that
Yes.
that feeling of like I literally don't know what I'm going to see next, and I feel like
Dave is like that too. I find that Dave, if you've watched
yeah,
Dave,
Dave
that's
is
like
well. He
that
makes
too.
great videos too. His music videos are fantastic.
Born again of this era that was raised by it. And
Yeah,
now it's his kind of spin in this modern age
yeah,
on what he was raised on. And I yes, absolutely,
yeah. So
absolutely. So
it
you
was
got to
like
work there. You got to work at MTV. Like
and it was yeah, and like and I think this pinpoints it exactly like when I arrived because it was at a moment when MTV had been this like genuinely important cultural force that like
yes,
had like genuinely like launched like real like artistic careers into the popular consciousness, which was great. But they were
yes,
also it had been a couple of years of them doing like Singled Out with Jenny McCarthy. You know, they were starting to be this vibe of like, you know, they've curdled a little bit and
yep,
they're not doing like interesting things again.
yep,
And so yeah, we arrived and that was kind of the mission. The mission was how do we start doing things that are other than music videos, but with an MTV imprimatur.
yeah,
And specifically, the question when we arrived was, what is the MTV sitcom? Like that was the big question. Like sort of like if you just imagine it like written on the wall, like it was just what is the MTV sitcom?
mm-hmm.
What is it? What is a sitcom? What's the MTV version of what a sitcom could be? And we arrived working in the development department for some wonderful people named Jeremiah Bosgang and Carol Ang, and these were our bosses, and they were we I had never considered TV writing as a job. It never occurred to me that like that's something that like there are people out there that cash a paycheck every week
Yep.
writing the funny things that I see on TV. It just
Yep.
never really crossed my mind. But that was the summer that it did cross my mind. And it was sort of like a window into, oh, this is how it works. And, you know, being in development meant, especially being an intern in the development department, meant sort of like we were like meeting various like writers at the elevator and bringing them in and giving them their bottle of water and the basically writers coming in to pitch their idea of what an MTV sitcom could be. And we saw a lot of we like read a lot of scripts that year. We really got a sense of like how sitcoms work through this process. And also, I mean, just as an aside, like so, and this is not to take anything away from, because Jeremiah and Carol were brilliant executives and really smart,
Yep.
and but at the same time, you just realize how much of it is luck and how much of it is like how easy it is to sort of like miss, like I guess what I'm getting at is the number of things that we saw that summer that almost could have gone on MTV but ended up not,
Yeah.
but then became like there were like the screenplay for Being John Malkovich arrived in
Oh
our
my
office
God. Spike
because MTV
Jones.
Films was starting up too at the same time.
Yeah.
And
And Spike Jones very, very much in the MTV universe with the
yeah,
pieces of
oh
art
my
that he
God,
created. Yes.
yeah, it was like this.
Yeah.
It felt like a 6-inch putt, except it was just, you have to remember that at that time, like imagine getting that screenplay and it's just like the first question is like, is John Malkovich attached to this? And he wasn't. He was not attached. Like there was no like I don't know if people even I don't know if he was even aware of the script at this time when I read it. So it was like, who is this guy writing a script called Being John Malkovich, where the main character, like one of the main characters, is John Malkovich, and we don't know if it's John Malkovich. And so it was like, they respect. I think they respectfully passed on it. That I don't remember, but I think they didn't. I think MTV didn't produce that one, but and for that reason, and like it's in hindsight, it's like, yeah, that was the right choice. Like if you're like at the blackjack table, like you double down when you're supposed to double down, and
We're gonna hit on 20.
when you don't, yeah, but like that would have been hitting on 20, but someone hit on 20 and came up with an ace. So that was another one that came around was they were like, often our bosses would be like, oh, have you seen this? You got to check this thing out. And one of the things they showed us was like, oh, there's this funny video of these it's this cartoon of these little kids and they're swearing, and it's really funny, and it's Jesus fighting a kung fu battle with Santa Claus. And isn't this great? And we watched it and like it blew our minds. We were laughing so hard, and it was just kind of this feeling of like, oh God, that's so funny. But you can't have kids swearing on TV. So yeah, we obviously can't do this, but how funny is this? And like, and we were one floor up from Comedy Central. So like that tape somehow made its way downstairs, and I guess the people at Comedy Central, they figured out how to do it. They said,
Yeah.
you know what, maybe we can do this show with these kids who swear, and the rest is obviously history. But anyway, it was an amazing summer, and it definitely it was sort of eye-opening. I think, and I was really thinking about this and sort of like self-analyzing the other day, and like it occurred to me, like I really feel like part of what drew me to TV writing was I love the arts, and I love writing, and I love like creating, and it always felt like something I wanted to do. But I also I grew up in a household with, a dad who put on a suit every day and went to work, and my mom went to work too. And I really I think I really had it like I didn't grow up exposed to like the bohemian lifestyle. I didn't grow up exposed to like this idea of being an artist where you're just kind of floating through life and just like making ends meet where you can. And which is so romantic and wonderful, and I kind of wish I had that, but at the same time I'm grateful for the work ethic that my dad taught me, and the that sort of like that stability and solidity. So TV writing specifically felt like it hit this like sweet spot of you're being creative, and you're putting your work out into the world, and you're participating in the artistic conversation of the universe, but you also have an office, and you have you have a time
structure.
that you're supposed to be at work every day, and a time that you leave every day. It's a structure, and I think I think my temperament was like drawn to like I want a job. I don't want a just thing where it's like, oh, I don't feel like writing today. I want to like have be in that. Yeah, I want to be on a treadmill.
Well, you sure got it when you went to Letterman.
Yeah,
You sure had the opportunity.
that was the big takeaway. So it was. So anyway, I just to finish the story, like that summer, in addition to that, Craig and I kind of became best friends, and we in addition to all the stuff we did at work, we like started making music together on weekends. We would like go to his house and like record music on in his basement. He had a drum set, and that was kind of that summer was the birth of the Solids, among other things. Who, which was our band that we, sort of we use that name for like anytime we record music.
The evolution of the testosterones.
It was, and we sort of, and then we also, like halfway through the summer, as we were seeing all these submissions for different versions of what the MTV sitcom looked like, we started getting ambitious and thinking like, well, you know what, we know MTV as good as anyone. We've been watching it our whole lives. We have the energy for this. We have the desire. Let's try and write our own version of the MTV sitcom. And we ended up developing something. Like they were like Jenny McCarthy was the actress that they had on this. They had a holding contract with her, and they were like just betting big on Jenny McCarthy and thinking like, all right, let's come up with the Jenny McCarthy sitcom. And so we came up with something that was like it was sort of a Larry Sanders type show about backstage at, like, this is in the heyday of those, like, the Maury Povich, like the daytime circus TV show.
Springer, Sally
shows.
Jesse Raphael, the whole.
Yeah, so we imagine Jenny McCarthy as the host of one of those shows, and like what goes on backstage, and it didn't get made, obviously. It didn't become the MTV sitcom. Actually, the answer to that question, what is the MTV sitcom, that was answered like a couple years later. Like they took them a while to figure it out, but it ended up being the Osbournes.
Yeah,
which, like,
absolutely.
if you think about it, is like, that is like, when you think about it, it's like, yes, that's exactly what the MTV sitcom should be, because it was like doing the thing that they did well already, which was reality, but and bringing in Ozzy Osbourne, and it was such a, I mean, that was like, I remember when that show came out, that was like groundbreaking, and I feel like it doesn't get enough credit and attention as just like that first season was so funny. It was so watchable and enjoyable. So anyway,
original.
There was nothing like it. Yeah, they had Pat Boone singing "Crazy Train" for the opening. Like, it was really funny. But
okay, so at this point here, you're getting more ambitious. Comedy Central's on a different floor. Like, oh man, my history is getting muddled here. Were MTV and Comedy Central part of the CBS family at that point, or at that point had they not?
I don't know if they were CBS, but they were definitely Viacom. They were definitely the same company.
Right.
Yeah, because we could.
Did that provide any advantages or anything? Like, was it more inter-office going to apply for Letterman type stuff because you were in the family already?
Oh, no. It wasn't that. It wasn't. So what happened was that was the summer ended and we were done at MTV. But the thing that the sort of the one takeaway was Jeremiah, or our boss, Jeremiah Boss Gang. He he noticed us, and it was one of those great moments of like, and I've tried to do this now in my career, like notice the people on their way up who stick out and seem like they really want this and they really are motivated, and try to help them. And he helped Craig and I, and like we're, I'm here today because of it.
Isn't that the greatest thing in the world? It
is. Yeah. I'm so grateful for it. And he but yeah, he said to us, he had been, an executive. He'd been a writer himself he'd like written and financed his own movie that he made. And so he sort of knew that world. And he said, I have a friend who is an agent who, he was like a pretty big talent agent. And he said, I don't do this often, but you guys have impressed me enough that, you can, if you want to reach out to him, send him the funniest material you have, and in the cover letter, make sure you mention my name in the first sentence. Say Jeremiah Boss Gang asked us to reach out to you, which and that was all we got. That was what we left with, like his blessing to do that.
Wow.
And we this is the day before email, so really you have to send in put a stamp on an envelope and send it.
A packet was actually a packet. It wasn't a
Yeah, and a
little
packet was
digital.
actually a packet.
It wasn't a digital thing that you send off somewhere. It was an actual packet.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Craig and I, then it was, we showed up to senior year with sort of like no idea what we wanted to do. Like no conservative plan for what we're going to do after graduation, but this
Right.
kind of pie in the sky plan. But we had this one connection, this one like possibility. And so we spent the next semester really like with using all our spare time to generate material as a writing team. Like we at this point we had like we had linked up as a writing team. We're like, we're gonna do this as a team.
Yep.
And we wrote, I'm trying to remember now. I think we wrote a Seinfeld spec script.
Yep.
Like this is back when you had to like write just, it wasn't like you wouldn't send out a pilot to like you would send out like here's me showing that I know how to write characters on a show that's already very popular and already out there.
Yep.
So we wrote a Seinfeld spec script. And also this was the year, like a little bit the year before, but really that fall was the year Craig and I both fell in love with Conan O'Brien.
Awesome.
We were watching that. It was and you look back, it was that it really was like the formative season, and it was when they had like, it was basically like their writing staff was like, the Yankees. It was just like they had it was like Robert Smigel was there, and like all these people, and they were doing things like, Triumph the Insult Comic Dog appeared that season, Pimp Bot 5000. Just like it was like every night there was something funny, and every night there was something just like just astonishingly creative and inspiring, and we fell in love with it, and it's sort of like that unlocked this whole idea, because then you start, you think like, okay, I want to be a TV writer, and you look at the landscape, and there's not many options that don't involve moving to LA. Like LA is like, all of this stuff happens in LA, and so you got to go to Los Angeles, and Craig and I both love New York, and we wanted to stay in New York. The options for staying in New York were these comedy variety shows like Letterman, Conan, SNL.
Yep.
I think like the Daily Show, it was Craig Kilborn then, and it was just starting up. But those were the options. So there wasn't a lot, but we really like fixed on, well, we have to get onto Conan O'Brien. We're obsessed with Conan O'Brien. They seem like an amazing, it's an amazing environment to be in, and like just to be working with these writers would be incredible. It's pie in the sky, but let's try for it. So we wrote a packet of Conan O'Brien material, like skits, possible, like we wrote some in the year 2000s.
Wow.
We wrote some like
that was such a funny premise. It's 3 years before the year 2000.
I know, and then they kept doing it like long afterwards. It was so great.
Great.
And so we had these two things. We had our Conan packet and our Seinfeld spec. And we put it in the mail, we sent it. It arrived, and this is where, like, we're living in Connecticut. Neither of us had ever set foot in Los Angeles, so we didn't know. All we knew about it was like from watching like The Player and like Robert Altman movies. So we're picturing it, arriving on Griffin Mill's desk, and we're picturing Tim Robbins opening it up, and it says, "We're gonna kill you."
Oh, I love the tapestry. I love the picture you're painting. That's so great. These perfect references.
No stars. But we sent it, and I'm assuming what happened next was this agent, whose name is Elliot Webb. He got
what
our
agency?
packet.
It wasn't CAA, was it?
It was Broder Curlin Webb Uffner. So his name was and they're no longer in exist. They were swallowed up by another agency.
I'm pretty sure they worked on my back case for a car accident once. Those guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can see their ads are on buses, and no, they were a very respectable writers agency,
awesome.
talent agency.
Yep.
And but so I think the envelope arrived on Elliot's desk, and it worked the way it was supposed to. He must have read Jeremiah Boskang's name and said, okay, well, I respect this guy, so I should take this seriously. I'm guessing what he did then, though, was he saw, like, the next sentence was like, we are currently seniors at Wesleyan University, and he was like, okay, this is not for me. But I'm way too high up on the food chain to deal with these knuckleheads from, writing me from their college computer lab. But I'm gonna hand this off to who I'm assuming the lowest agent on the totem pole at that time. And they gave it to a guy who had just been hired as an agent, who was probably, I'm assuming, probably working in a closet, like in a tiny little office. And someone walked by and said, Elliot wants you to look at this. And so he opened up the envelope and he looked at it and he liked it and he laughed, and he called us up. He called the number, and I get this message, and it's like, hi, this is Matt Rice calling from Rotor Curlin Webb Uffner. I want to talk about your submission. And I'm picturing, like, it's, oh my God, this is a guy. I'm picturing like a giant window with like the skyline behind him, and like,
I just got a call from Mike Ovitz.
Yeah, exactly. But and the great thing is that this young man who was calling us, and I say young because he was, in my mind, he was like this old wise, like, but he was like 25 maybe at the time, 24. I don't know. He was very, very young. Yep. Matt Rice was his name, and he is our agent to this day. And he is now,
that makes me
like,
so happy.
A managing partner at UTA. He's like running Hollywood now, and
that
but
makes me so happy to hear. That's amazing.
And it was a good, and honestly, like, in hindsight, he was like, I mean, he's a brilliant guy, and it was incredible company to be in among his few clients, because the clients he had at that time, there weren't many, but it was us, Will Forte was like, as a writer, it wasn't even like really a performer at the time, and Chris Miller and Phil Lord, who
holy cow, are you kidding me?
Yeah, and we, through Matt, we ended up becoming friends with those guys. That I'm jumping ahead in the story, but like that's how we all kind of ended up working together on How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
So yeah, Matt was just like, he liked our stuff. He also like, in the first conversation, he basically said, like, so I'm going to be honest with you, this Seinfeld script is no good. It's bad. And he still talks about it to this day. Like he'll still say, like, I keep it somewhere, and I'm gonna take it out and make you read it someday, just to so you can see how bad of a sitcom writer you were at that point.
Okay, I gotta say this right now. I'm so glad you're mentioning this point, because I'm thinking that you are Gary Shandling going with your Sanford and Son script and putting it in, oh man, and suddenly all the doors are opening.
No,
I love the fact that this is not that.
It was I don't remember much about the script, but the one detail I do remember about it was that it ended up being like the premise of it, the joke of it, ended up being something they kind of did on the show the next season. And they did it in a much funnier, much better Larry David way than we ever could have done. But it was, the premise of our Seinfeld spec was that George gets in an argument with someone, and they're making fun of him, and he thinks of a cool comeback like a day later.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
really?
And it was the fish store call. It was that, but ours wasn't nearly as funny as that. Ours was bad. It was genuinely bad. We started from the same place, and we went somewhere that just, like, we didn't have it, but they obviously had it, and we're still talking about it 25 years later.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was not a good script. But he said, your Conan stuff is good, and like, this you could do this. You could do, like, let's focus on. And that was music to our ears, because that was our first choice. We didn't want to, like, jump right into sitcoms. We wanted to, like, live in New York. And he immediately said, the bad news is, Conan, everybody loves working there, nobody wants to leave, and it's like, well, of course they don't. I'm like, why
Yeah.
would they? I
Yeah.
wouldn't. Uh, um, so that's probably not going to happen. But I'd love to represent you and help you look for something that will happen. So we're like, okay, sure. All right, we have an agent now, and it's like senior year, and that was encouraging, but it was also kind of like, but we don't have a job, and we're about to graduate. Um, he also put us in touch with Matt Rice. The other smart thing that he did was he put us in touch with David Miner, who became our manager, who was who has gone on to become he managed like pretty much every great comedian and TV writer that you've seen has at some point worked with David Miner. He's a legend himself now, and he like produced 30 Rock and all of Tina Fey's stuff, and
Wow.
he's a lovely guy too. And the
How
two of
crazy is
them,
it to say that you have those people in your orbit? How
oh,
cool is that?
I mean, it's just tremendous luck. I mean, that's why I say it's luck. I mean, there are so many people that these are like your representatives are like the caretakers of your career, and you are like you're in their hands. Like you don't,
Yeah.
and there's not much, especially back then when there was no real way to, like, nowadays you can, if you want the world to know about you and know how funny you are, you can go on Twitter, you can go
Yep.
on, you can make a video and put it on TikTok. You can get your stuff out there, and
Yeah.
it's seen,
You're preaching to the choir on this one. I'm really grateful for the invention of the internet, because
yeah,
the financial
it's
planner who had this broadcaster in him that wanted to explode out and has this love. There's no way that I could have ever done that in the conventional way,
yeah,
to do that. And so I appreciate where you're coming from here, how the path is completely different today than it was back then.
it really is. And back then you really were like, yeah, I and it was the relationships that Matt had and that David had that uh that put us, basically, that eventually put us in front of the people at Letterman. And I think Letterman, like, we again, like, another lucky break was, we we spent the summer like still generating material, and we interviewed at a couple places. We interviewed for like the Keenan Ivory Wayans show. He had like a
Yep.
which, in hindsight, we didn't get that job. And I often look back at that and think, like, God, if we had gotten that job, we would have moved to Los Angeles. And Keenan is like, he's a legend also, and he's made
Yep.
so many things that have made us smile over the years. That particular show did not last.
Yeah,
That
you would have been
wasn't.
on the one that wasn't in living color. You would have been,
Yeah,
and then what?
it was
And
like
then what?
it was a talk show, and like it didn't
Yeah,
last for whatever reason, and we would have gotten there, and like within a week had to look for a new job, and
exactly.
living in Los Angeles, not knowing anybody. But
Yep.
as it happened that summer, I think what happened was two. Usually, you'll lose a writer, and so you have to replace them. And at Letterman, there was a and it's important to make this distinction. In sitcoms, if you're a writing team, you split a salary. So like one slot belongs to the writing team, and you just make half as much
Yeah.
as the other. It doesn't work that way in comedy variety. Like in comedy
Yeah.
variety, you are two. If there's two writers, that's two slots. You can't split a slot. So to find a job for two writers in comedy variety means two slots have to be available on a
Yeah.
show at any given time, which is rare.
But there was a
And
turnover happening at Letterman at this point, wasn't there?
there was, well,
Yeah.
there were some things that changed. I think Rob Burnett had just taken over, or
Yeah.
recently, and things were, yeah, it was. I think, like, if I were to really, like, because I don't know what conversations were going on. It was above our pay grade, but like I would imagine that this was around the time when Leno was starting to pass in the ratings, was starting to gain on them. And the one thing that Letterman could count on was that he did better with like 18 to 34, like with the
Yes.
younger viewers. But also, I mean, time marches on, and I think his 50th birthday happened around that time, and I think,
Yep.
like we I think there was like some sense of like, we need to make sure that we're still connecting with younger viewers. And again, I have no idea if this is actually how these conversations happen, but I do know that 2 slots opened up and Craig and I applied for them, and for some reason they felt good about hiring 2 guys right out of college. So that I think that's that had something to do with how that happened. Right before us, like less than a year before us, Rodney Rothman had been hired also.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Who's gone on to great things as well. But he was I think at the time, and I think maybe still is, held the crown for the run of the show of the youngest writer to be hired on the show. And then Craig and I were number 2 and number 3.
This was, by the way, Don, just let me know too. This is around the time that Doug Mitchell left, and that was the spot that around that time that opened up for. So if we're getting real specific here,
yes,
I
remember Doug.
Peter
I
Husick
didn't...
left 3 months earlier as well. So there you go.
Wait, sorry,
Peter Husick.
Yeah, Pete Hike.
Hike. Sorry, Hike. I apologize.
Pete and Alex were the writers, and they've gone on to, like, they worked for. God, they worked on everything. I mean, Pete Hike and Alex Gregory. You can IMDb them. They're like, they went on to incredible things. I think they were on Veep. They've like, you know,
all people I want to talk to as well. So any intros and anything like that, I want to get. We're building a tapestry here.
For sure.
Did you meet with Steve Young? Who did you meet with first when you showed up there?
Our first interview was with Tim Long and Kate Adler, and Kate was was an executive, and she's gone on to do a lot. She moved out here to LA, and we've like worked with her a few times since then. But she was the, like,
would love to talk to her as well, by the way. Awesome.
She'd be great to talk to.
Yeah.
But Tim Long
Tim,
was he was the head writer at the time, and he liked our material. The other thing is that we so it's the way it actually played out was that I think Pete and Alex left, because I think it was 2 slots became available. So Pete and Alex left, and they were looking to hire 2 writers. And so we get this call from Dave Miner basically saying, Letterman's hiring. They're gonna fill these spots fast. So you need, and we're like, great. Well, can they just read our Conan O'Brien packet and see that we can write this kind of? They were like, they need to see a Letterman packet, and you have like 48 hours to do it.
Holy crap. Do you remember the top 10? Do you remember the top 10 part of that you submitted? There must have been one.
It would have been great if I had, like, I don't remember. Okay, I do remember the topic. The topic was,
that's what I'm asking. Perfect.
It was top 10 ways life would be different if a dog were president. The president was a dog. And that was what I remember about it, because they told us that was the topic that every writer had to write, which was kind of fun, because it was sort of like an SAT. It was like everyone's answering the same questions, so you really, like, sort of like it was very scientifically controlled experiment of, like, which writers write the jokes that we like, you know. And I can't remember any of the jokes. I should have like researched this before getting on with you, but
no. Like seriously, Carter, I swear to God, this, as far as I'm concerned, this is us breaking the ice and building rapport and all this sort of stuff. I would love to go deeper with more specifics later on in another episode for sure. So this is great. I'll
look it up. I'll look it up and I'll try and find that.
Okay, no, this is awesome. Yeah.
But I remember sort of the irony of it was, Craig and I thought, oh my God, we're gonna have to pull like 2 all-nighters. We've got 48 hours to do this. That you can't write a top 10 list in 48 hours. That's crazy. Not really computing that, like, well, when you get the job,
it's a machine.
You're gonna have an hour to write a top 10 list. Like, you have to, it's so we did it. We, like, just burn the midnight oil, and we worked in, there was like a diner, and I was like staying at Craig's mom, God bless her, like took me in, and like I was like her like second son that summer, and she let me stay in their guest room. And so Craig and I were like just working at this diner, like around the clock, coming up with jokes, and we made like a packet of material and submitted it. And and we also like we submitted our resumes because we'd never done this before, and like which like it sounds like, yeah, of course, write up your resume too and include that, but it's like what we found out is that like writers don't do that, like you don't like do like a resume with like your, and basically like we had said like included on our resume like graduate Wesleyan University Bachelor of Arts GPA 3.8 or whatever. We like put our GPA, so like they like I remember like the first thing in the meeting was Tim kind of making fun of us, where he's like, we loved your material and we're really interested in meeting you, and we're really impressed by this GPA. This is great. 3.8. That's really that's what we're looking for here at Letterman. And it was just it was very funny. But we had like a lovely meeting with them, and just Tim is just was such a lovely guy. And
was Joe Toplin there too?
He was, yeah, he was. We didn't meet him then, but yeah, we worked with Joe the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we had a great meeting, and then we got called back for a second meeting, and the second meeting was with Tim and Rob Burnett, and the executive producer. Yeah. And so the first meeting took place on the 7th floor, and this meeting took place on the 12th floor. So it's like, all right, we're moving up, and that was on a Friday, and so we got called in, and it was things were kind of quiet there. Like what we discovered later on was that Fridays were they didn't shoot a show on Friday, so Friday was the dark day, and it was a little bit quieter. So we go up to the 12th floor, and go into Rob's office, and Tim is there too, and they sit down, and we talk to Rob for a little bit, get to know him. And then Rob just turns to Tim and says, like, well, they seem good to me. What do you think? And Tim says, yeah, let's do it. And Rob says, all right, you come back on Monday. You're hired, which was like, we weren't expecting that at all. And we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you. We start gushing. We're like, really like, I mean, it was like, I can't, nothing has ever compared to it since. Like no high has ever in this career has will compare to like that moment of like, oh my God, we're gonna actually write for David Letterman. We're like, this is real. And we're stammering and saying how wonderful it is. And I remember Rob saying like, you should just know this is the best part. This moment right now is the best part. Starting Monday, you're gonna hate this place, but enjoy this weekend. It was really funny. And the one other thing I remember about that day was Craig and I, we walked out of the office in such a haze, like I can't believe that just happened. This is the offices of 1697 Broadway, where the Ed Sullivan Theater is located. Mm-hmm. It's not a huge building, and it's not a complicated. It's basically an L shape. It's not, but like we managed to somehow get lost and totally like forget where the elevator was.
Awesome.
We went right past it, and we ended up taking, going down and like taking the right at the end of the hall, like the L of the hall, and found ourselves right in front of Letterman's office, and there's Dave Letterman just standing there in the hallway. We like turn this corner, and it's like and like I just stammering. He's like, hello, and like who are these two people that I don't know that are just wandering around my office floor? And I managed to get out the words, do you know where the elevator is?
Oh, that's great.
And I remember the way I said it, because I didn't say, where's the elevator? I said, do you know where the elevator is? As though the guy whose name is in giant letters on the sign doesn't know where the elevator is. And he was very polite and directed us to the elevator. And that was the only time I met Dave. But it was great. No, I'm just kidding.
I was almost like, you almost had me on that, because it's like, there are people who could say exactly that. That was the only time. Yeah. The only time I met him was on the photo day where we were all gathered together and he showed up, and that was it.
Yeah. He was very surgical with his appearances.
Story, Carter.
What's that?
That is a charming story. Oh. Like that is really, and Rob being tongue in cheek about this, because I mean, he's not wrong. Like everything changes at that point, but the same time, as everything is changing, that means you're learning how things work, and every time you see how something works, the whimsy is also there because you're seeing it and you're there live and in person and for 5 years. Do you remember the first time, like, did you and Craig get something? You started on the Monday. Did you get something on that week? Or was there a slower uptake to finding the voice of the show and what to do and how to do it? Did they hand you any refillables to kind of work on it first? What were the first weeks like?
God, I'm really like it's. I wish I could remember the exact what the first joke we got on the air, like, because I think it might have been like a top 10. Like the top 10 list is that's the thing that everyone has to work on every day. So like it was probably a top 10 joke. It was probably the first thing we got on the air. And for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. And maybe Craig will remember. I remember our first well, and on the topic of our us beginning, so like we did, I can't really remember I feel like it happened a week into our run. So we got the job, and one of the things Rob said to us in that meeting was like, here's what the job is. The job is pick up the newspaper, read whatever's on the front page, write jokes about it. Like that's the show. And it was at a time when like the New York Daily News and the New York Post were like the perfect like sort of
good headlines.
They were good headlines because it's never going to be it's not going to be the Wall Street Journal. It's not going to be like the Fed raises interest rates. It's going to be whatever the dumb thing going on in pop culture is, or whatever so that was it was just read the newspaper, write about it. And this is before the internet. This is like the internet was not a factor at this point, so it really was like every writer gets their papers delivered in the morning and then read that, write jokes. Great. And our second week, it wasn't our it would be a funnier story if it was our first week, but it was our second week. The Sunday night going into the next Monday was when Princess Diana died. And
so this is, Don mentioned this earlier. Gabe Abelson talked about this because he started the same week that you guys did.
He did. That's right. Gabe started too. Yeah.
And how do you prepare for a monologue after this cultural, crazy, dark, sad, sad event happens? Okay. Yes.
It was stunning. And it really was like, and it was a great sort of first curveball to get and to realize like, oh, this is like, we don't have control over the things that we're here to talk about. It prepared me for, during my time while I was there, like 9/11 happened. And that was the ultimate thing that like sort of changed like the way you look at comedy and the way you think about like, oh, what can we make jokes about? What can't we? So it was a good, it was a good sort of first surprise. And I mean, I say good, like it was very sad, but
no, it was a tremendous learning experience.
It was.
For a world event. And you realize the gravity of the show. Like you talk about 9/11, like we talked to Tommy about that. I want to have Tommy back on the show again. He was one of our early guests, and the Bush stuff. And how where you guys were at with then President Bush at the time, versus what it turned into after 9/11, and when can we bring it back to? And he did something so ridiculous and not political. He walked into a door or something like that, and they're like, "Fine, you can do it again. You can make fun of him again." But the ebbs and flows of culture around you. What was acceptable before no longer is, or vice versa. That is a stunning thing to negotiate your writing career through, and you've done it through all sorts of challenges, including now into post-internet, and then of course now to the PC times, and it's a fascinating thing to talk about, being able to write during all of these eras, and I love that. Don gave me a couple of little hints here: Sesame Street and Julia Roberts' restraining order. Those are the two things that Don sent me here. So
Julia Roberts' restraining order, that was okay. The Sesame Street thing, I don't remember.
Okay.
But the Julia Roberts restraining order was our first mailbag letter, I believe, unless I'm mistaken.
And you guys did a lot of mailbag. You used that part of the franchise a lot, didn't you?
Yes, it was. We ended up taking over the mailbag after when Rodney became head writer. He was the head of mailbag, and so we everyone kind of shifted up the ladder. and we ended up taking over.
Julia was September 5th, 97. So that's right around this time. Like that's
Okay, yeah, that would
early
be
on. Yeah.
yeah, that was like
I
2
think
weeks
Diana
into the
passed
show.
on the 31st, on the end of August, I think. So yeah, that's bang
Yeah.
on. And so
That
what
was
was
it, yeah.
that must have been something like that. Because I mean, would have been very, very neat to see.
Oh yeah, that was huge. I that was and it was just it was a nothing joke too. It was just like I can't remember. I'm trying to remember like the context of it. It was something where the punchline was like Julia Roberts. It was like I think it was like, did Julia Roberts get you anything for your birthday? And he said, "Oh, just a restraining order." Boing. And like there was, and then, but then
Good
the
joke.
joke was that like we would play this music, and there was
Yeah.
like, oh, it was a thing where it's like, if you'd like a transcript to this joke, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Julia Roberts restraining order joke, care of, and it was just like just a dumb little joke. But yeah, that was the first one that we got on.
Did you ever talk to the because it seems to be like Ellenberg when he was on the show, he talked about, you end up being the phone person on the writer's floor, and then you end up being the writer's assistant where you go through the mail and things like that. When you did stuff like that, send the self-addressed stamp envelope to, did very many people do that back then? Were there still people who were like, I'm in on this, I'm going to send and thus helping the creative process grow more?
Yeah, so the way it worked was you had heads of departments. You had like the head of mailbag and the head of remotes, and the Stangl brothers were the head of remotes, and they were and remotes was on Friday when we weren't shooting a show. Dave would go out and shoot a remote and do something funny out in the world, and they'd film it and make these like 3-minute packages.
Yeah.
That would air like in the act 4 of an episode.
Yeah.
And we all the other writers, you were sort of like everyone was a utility player, and everyone was just kind of you would get like really like talking through like the structure of your day as you show up, and you're sort of there'd be a meeting in the morning where we just sort of like talk. We would like have FaceTime with each other, and not like computer FaceTime, but like actual FaceTime. I should be clear. And we would just talk about like what's in the news, and what are we going to do, like what are the big assignments that are going to be coming up. It was sort of where like Tim and then Rodney and then the Stangls, like the head writer, would sort of like touch base with all the writers. And then we'd all go off to our, like the first thing, I think sometimes we would like maybe we would I think we would show up at the morning meetings with top 10 topics. That was the thing that you would show up with. And like, so what's the topic going to be? And everyone's read the newspaper, and everyone's sort of like said like, oh, Mayor Giuliani did something funny, so maybe we'll do a top 10 about that. Or,
was there ever consensus? People would come with the same thing, so you knew you were all on the same wavelength, or were they all original and different or fresh, or did it
they vary? Were I mean, I think this was especially at a time when Craig and I had grown up on the weird top 10 topics that were like, top 10 numbers between 1 and 10, things like that like we always loved. But and we still did those from time to time, but for the most part, there was a real push to make the top 10s topical and have them really reflect something going on in the news. And so that was always and so often people would show up and pitch the same thing, because if there's like one big news story, everyone sort of eventually gets around to the same take on it. But we would have that meeting, and I think we would even like settle on a topic. I think sometimes we would just like, and it was a time, we usually, I think we still had to pitch things to Dave. And so Dave, maybe they would, I think maybe like the head writer would take like a few topics down to Dave and pitch them to Dave, and then one would get approved. When it would get approved, basically then we would all shuffle off to our offices, and we would the assignments for the day would arrive in the form of these Xeroxes, like the head writer would say, okay, we got this topic approved. And he would say to the intern, tell the writers, the topic is this. And we want a passive jokes due at 11 o'clock. And so like you'd be sitting in your office just twiddling your thumbs, and then the intern would come by with a Xerox. Everything was a Xerox, and it was like that just said in big letters, just handwritten in big letters, top 10 things Bill Clinton did on vacation, because maybe the story was like Bill Clinton's going on vacation. Top
and
10
are you and Craig in an
ideas.
office receiving this memo back? Are you two in the same in speaking or in voice reach of each other, and you start bouncing off each other, or is this something that you would do in solitude at this point?
Craig and I were we were in the same office. We had two desks in the same office, so everyone had their own office, and everyone got the assignment with the topic and due by 11 a.m. I think Craig and I, early on, I think we sort of like riffed together, and then eventually it became it's probably faster if we just like each write up our own. Like just sit there and write, and sometimes if one of us has an idea that's sort of half formed, but we can't figure out how to word it, we would like check with each other. But yeah, you would write them up and then print it out and put it in there was like, all these different, like on the door. It's really like I'm unlocking my memory of this, but I'm glad we're talking about this, because I don't want to like forget how things used to work. There was
you just defined why our show exists, Carter. You just literally defined why we're doing what we do. This is awesome.
Like on the door there were a bunch of different like kind of like slots, like folders to not folders, but file things. Like I don't know what the word for it is.
Like an inbox that sits on your door.
But there's like a bunch of different inboxes, and there'd be like one for top 10, one for mailbag, one for remote ideas.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you have a picture of one of those? Do you have a picture of one from back in the day? Do you have a photograph of one of those? Like that is.
I'll dig around and see if I can find it. But
that's cool. Anyway, yeah.
And that was the structure of your day, was like assignments come around on a Xerox, and it'll say, and so like the things that you could get assigned were like, top 10s were the big one. The head of mailbag, Rodney at the time, and then us when we took over, would ask the writers for mailbag ideas, because that was something that mailbag was on Friday, but it was something we would compile through the week, and it was sort of like, it was kind of like the longer the stuff that took a little longer to like get together, because there would be like tape pieces that you'd have to shoot.
I was just gonna say, especially if you had a remote or a tape piece that went along with it. Which was often.
Yeah, and that took a little more work, and we you would get your assignment on a Xerox and sit down at your computer, write as much as you could, come up with as many jokes, and then print it out and drop it in the box and wait for your next assignment. Like that was kind of the structure of it. It was, there would be like mailbag letters, there would be extras was a big thing, which is just like a funny thing that Dave can throw to, like a one joke bit that's more than just a joke, but like a little tape piece or something that he could throw to in the act one. We'd also need act one ideas, and often like there would be things like know your current events was a thing. I think it was like every Thursday was know your current events, and so we would have to write those jokes, and then interspersed through the day also we would meet a lot in the writers' room for things like, if there's like a Dave's video collection piece coming up, we would we would watch the clips from Dave's video collection and write funny jokes about them.
Yeah, let's punch it up. Same. And that's the collaborative process there that you got to enjoy as well, which is again, from everything that we've learned here so far on this show, different than a lot of other writers' rooms, which can be borderline predatory sometimes. There was a lot of collaboration as well, not just with you and Craig, but with everybody.
There was actually one of our some of our closest friends right off the bat were the Stangles. We really connected with and became good friends with them. But Will Forte was starting out. He was a writer and he ended up leaving the show like about 6 months in, and I think maybe he might have been that his contract didn't get picked up because he's Will Forte, and it was a very interesting thing, because it was a great lesson in. We started, when we first got there, he was like the next newest writer, and so the three of us kind of became this inseparable little team, and became such good friends. And Will, I mean, the whole experience was so humbling in terms of like realizing like, oh, professional funny people are really funny. People who are
Yeah.
professional funny people are like funnier than like your friends that you hang out with. Like these people are like like when they're really good at it, they're like they've got this antenna to heaven that like sends them things that you would never think of in a million years.
Well, and when
And
you're describing Will Forte, though, like you're also describing basically a cartoon character come to life,
yeah,
like
well,
as
and
well. Because I mean, he's a performer of like he
yeah,
must have been doing the
and
funny voices and things like that too. As
he
you,
was
you know,
like he was the and he was because he was just a writer, like we were his audience, and it was just like we had like front row seats to the Will show. But it was an interesting thing. Like the real lesson of it was that you realize like it's not just about like get a funny person for this job and they'll make it great. Because
right?
Letterman especially was so, I mean, this was at a time I think when the everyone was aware that we were past the heyday of like the rebellious
Yes.
like reinventing television Letterman, like the Letterman
Yeah.
of the 80s,
Yeah.
where it's unlike anything anyone's ever seen. Like
You're in a
it was
different
a
phase
combination of
now.
like he had spent a decade doing that, and also, he was on at 11:30. He was wearing a suit on stage. He's at the Ed Sullivan Theater. We're on CBS now.
Yeah.
It felt like this is like, prime time day. Like
Yeah.
we want this to be like, they wanted this to be like a real like have like a broad audience, and they
This
made
is
a great
CBS's
show for them.
Tonight Show. This is
Yeah,
the pinnacle of late
yeah,
night TV, and it needs to have a tone that
yeah,
shows that while still having dashes of the previous, in the basement type, cable access type feelings that they had, but strange. Those had echoes in the big show, but there are also echoes of Johnny Carson's Tonight Show in that show that needed to be incorporated. Am
yeah,
I saying it right?
yeah. No, that's exactly right, and I
Okay.
think that's 100%. I think especially for Dave, who like Johnny was sort of the star that he was steering his boat towards, like
Yep.
that was, and also Dave having now spent you know almost 2 decades on television, honing his character, his persona, like who he is, knowing
Yep.
who he was and what his voice was. Like you really realize, like the thing with Will, you realize like, oh, it's not just be funny, it's be funny in this specific way that's like
Yes.
exactly like fits Dave Letterman exactly. And Will, like it was such a great moment because like when he left the show, it was so sad, but it was also like you just knew like, oh, but he's gonna be
Yeah.
fine, because
Yeah.
this is absolutely for the best, because he's not going to blossom being a writer for Dave. He's going to
Yeah.
blossom by getting on SNL and being and people seeing like this specific thing that he can do that no one else can do. And that was exactly what happened. And it's been such a joy. Like Will is such a sweet, wonderful person. Like it's been such a joy seeing that happen for him. Like seeing
Well,
him like,
you go from working on Letterman, and this is the part that I can't wait to talk to people. Like Will's a great example of this. Louis C.K. is another example of this. How many times did somebody work on Letterman, and then when they came back to guest on Letterman,
yeah,
and were specifically told, do not talk about your love for Dave, do not talk about how you used to work for Dave, like do not talk about these things.
yeah,
But at the same time, there are so many little full circle things that happen. This is a prime example of one of the ones that we want to help talk about a little bit with our show, because we have no problem talking about our love for Dave. We have no problem talking about these little
yeah,
things. But that is a really nice example. I think about like again, Paul Sims is one. I loved after Letterman, I loved News Radio, and then I loved of course Larry Sanders. I mean, of course, Louis is a good example of that. There are others as well where Judd Apatow actually on Larry Sanders. I loved watching his name in hindsight going up in the credits as the years
yeah,
come by or went by, and then suddenly Freaks and Geeks, and now Judd is like this crazy Hollywood. You have a class of people who are around, and Judd might be a little bit before your time, but you have a class of people that you have seen this happen with. It must be incredibly fun to have that around you professionally and personally.
Yeah. Oh, it's tremendously, and it's like it's been. I mean, this is I think about this a lot because I'm transitioning into being an old guy in comedy as opposed to the young. I was, Craig and I began our career being the boys and being the kids, and like I think Dave's nickname for us was the Backpack Boys. We never heard him say this to us to our face.
Really?
Like, we're like, what are the backpack? I mean, and I think in a loving way, but like
That's
sort of the
great.
joke of it was like I don't think he ever saw us wearing backpacks, but like we just had this vibe about us, like we're like two
College
dudes
kids.
on campus who like
Yeah.
wandered onto the stage, and so
Oh,
like
how
we were
fun is
Backpack
that?
Boys.
Um,
But I like for the longest time, like part of I think my identity as a writer was the young guy, and
yeah.
now that I'm sort of grappling with like, oh, I'm not the young guy anymore, not by a long shot. Like I'm
Yeah.
now like way out of that uh that category. But the good thing about getting older, I found, is especially in this business, is like you really see how like I feel like the right people get rewarded eventually. Like you do, like there is like this sort of and like Rodney Rothman, working with Rodney, he was
Yep.
such he was like had so much energy and so much intelligence and such a like worked so hard to like push through to get to the funnier joke, or to the more the thing, get past the thing that you've seen before to the thing that you haven't seen. And it just felt like, oh, he's gonna do something great eventually. Like after Letterman, he's gonna do something great, and he went on to win an Oscar.
Yeah.
He's like he wrote the Spider-Man movie,
Yeah.
and also with Will. Like it was just like it's I don't know. Like I'm it's been nice seeing people blossom like that over the years, and more often than not, it's the people that you want it to happen to.
So
So
this is a very cool thing you've brought up, because it's an intergenerational thing within the pants world. It started with, I shouldn't say it started, it started with Shecky actually. So Rick Sheckman he's my boy.
yeah,
My conciliary
R.I.P.
for this show was Rick
Wonderful
Sheckman.
guy.
I loved Rick so much, and I miss him every day still. And one of the things that I love about Rick so much is when he and I would talk on the phone, he would talk about how proud he was of people that he hired, like including Mary, like just and the
Yeah,
people that he hired that went to do something within the show or went to do something, how proud he was. When Kellison was on, immediately puts me in contact with O'Donnell, because O'Donnell did that to him, pulled him out. He was this kid that just, and O'Donnell saw something in him and pulled that out. And now Kellison wants to do that for others. And he kind of like, I love how much of that there was within the fabric of folks who ran this body of work. And I love hearing you talk about it, because you're that next generation. I think about Grossman and Ellenberg right now at the Tonight Show. They're the older guy writers who used to work
yeah.
for Letterman, with a bunch of kids around them too. Like it's very, very awesome talking about all of this stuff. Now I want to be okay. I can go hours, just so you know.
Yeah.
Like
Oh my
Jeff
gosh,
Martin
we've
and I
been talking
went
a
3
while.
hours, so we're fine. How are you doing for time over there? I just want to make sure we're good.
I could do a little bit longer.
We got a little longer. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
And
okay.
obviously, like I feel like there's a synergy. Obviously, you will come back, right? Like,
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Of course, yeah.
Because I still want to get to mutual friend. I still want to get to. There's a bunch of things I want to get to still, but there's no way we're going to. So I'm going to talk about. There's a Giller sent me a bunch of things, but one of the things, which Muppet is your favorite? Bert and Ernie in twin beds, and then the quote is, "Dave and his Canadian buddy can kiss my foam rubber ass." I don't know if that rings any bells for you or not.
That was our first. I don't remember that sounds like a Craig joke. That's very funny. That feels like that must have been Craig. Was that our first one? That must have been.
I don't know if it was your first one, but it was definitely an early one.
Okay.
August, it seems, of 97. So yeah, that's early on. Okay. So, and I want to talk about writers. Because I mean, so there's a really neat little segue. Where have you been in your writing career? where were you during some writer strikes that happened?
Oh, yeah.
You were never at Letterman for one, I don't think.
I don't think I was. I think maybe there was one.
For How I Met Your Mother, maybe?
How many writer strikes have I been? Was it two? Were there two of them? I'm trying to remember if there's one. I think if there, the one that I really remember was during How I Met Your Mother. That was in what was that, 2008? I think, was it 2007, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that was I think that was like was that like exactly 6 months? I think it was a 6 month strike.
Yeah. That's the one where
My
everybody,
memory
Conan
is
and Dave and all
gone.
the guys
Like,
were growing the beard. And
what's
Pants
that?
made everyone was growing the beard for it and everything. And then Pants made the deal outside of that was the hallmark of that one, was Pants made the deal outside of the WGA to go back to work.
Oh, yeah.
That was that year, I think. And then the
Oh,
one
right,
previous,
right. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
one previous was around when Survivor came out, because that was the kind of the birth of the reality show.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were in the business at that point. I'm just trying to figure out where.
Yeah, no, I was in it was season 3 of How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it must have been like in the fall, I think, of How I Met Your Mother, because I think it was like I think we were about 10 episodes into season 3
Yeah.
when it started.
Yeah.
And I remember that because the last episode that happened before the strike, because you're like, when a strike is coming up, and we're in this situation again now, and so it's
Yes.
like it's you really like you go into this like philosophical, like you sort of like ask these questions about the nature of like what is scab work and what is not scab work. Like,
Yep.
specifically, like, if we like hustle to like make extra episodes, that'll is that good or bad? Is that, because it's bad in the sense that, like, realistically, what you want to do with a strike is put the hurt on management as hard as you can,
Yeah.
as fast as you can, so that it gets the strike over faster. But at the same time, you like, you want to, like, you have a crew that is working on the show, and you want to make sure that they get as much work as they can get. And so what we landed on was we hurried up and got one last script ready that we really finished, like, handed in at 11:59
Wow.
before the strike began.
Yep.
And it was the only episode that could, usually the way, and I'm jumping ahead to my life on How I Met Your Mother, but usually the way How I Met Your Mother was made is we would write a script, like the writing staff would write the script together, and it would be, we'd have a few table reads to get a sense of, like, does this joke work, does that joke work?
Yep.
And eventually you show up with a shooting script, and it's realistically, it's probably about 75 to 80% done, because then you get on the set, and there's always a writer on the set, which doesn't happen anymore. And that's part of what we're going on strike about, actually, right now, because writers nowadays, they've turned this, they've sort of nickel and dimed this gig of being a TV writer down to this thing where you're just like, you're in a room just for the writing process, and then you can just kiss off into oblivion once the writing is done, and then it goes, and the showrunners on their own for the actual shooting and editing and all that stuff. Whereas, at the time, writers were a part of everything, and we had the writers. We always had like 2 or 3 writers on the set for the entire shooting of an episode, and we would you would inevitably be making little changes, seeing what works. You would rehearse every scene, and then huddle up and say, like, okay, that joke didn't work, quick, what else do we have? Come up with something else, or you'd see opportunities where it's like, oh, I love the way Neil did that with that line, let's expand that and add this line, and so much of it was that collaboration on the set. And so this episode, it was called The Platinum Rule. For people who know the show, they can go back and watch it. It was the one episode that we did that did not have any writer on the set. And so, like, in preparation for it.
And does it show?
I don't know. I think it turned out really good, actually. I think the episode turned out great. And so I was very proud of it. I think it was like, I think we had also gotten into this complacent sense of like, for us, like a finished script is like 75% there, which I think drove production crazy, by the way, because they did like just finish the script, don't like. I was known on the set of How I Met Your Mother as shoot for days bays, because I would like always like have another idea, like, wait, let's add this, and let's get one more take where we do this, and but this was the one where it was like, all right, we have to just like, whatever's on the script is what they read, is what the actors are going to perform, and we'll do that. And so that episode was written and submitted, and then it was the first episode that it was just the director on the set.
Yep.
And Pam Fryman, who, like, if you're going to trust any director to get a great episode, it would be Pam Fryman.
December 10th, 2007 is when it aired.
Okay, yeah, it was 07.
Yeah.
And it was it also, we were in the edit room, and so much of the fun of creating How I Met Your Mother took place in the edit room. And this is one where like I like had to go through with Sue Fetterman, our Emmy-winning editor, who put together so many classic episodes, and just sort of go through and say, like, here's what I think we're shooting, and here's how I want it to play, but like, I'm not going to be here. I think the one detail that I remember putting in was the last scene is a montage under the song "Ooh Child" from the 70s, which was
right
like
on.
And it was kind of like, it felt like, all right, this is going to be our like sort of wink to like, we're going into the strike.
Yeah.
Things are going to get easier. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And that was sort of like, because we knew that like this could be the last episode that airs for 2 years. Like there could be strike could last forever. And this could be the end of the series for all we know,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my memory of, and then we were off on strike for the next 6 months.
And it's looking like that's going to happen again here. Obviously, we hope that cooler heads can prevail and get these artists paid. But at the end of the day, I'm seeing all these articles. We just started our Twitter on the Letterman podcast, started looking at it seriously, and some of the yourself and some of these other writers that we're following that are talking about this. The idea of to get into writing now, you got to have like me, I've got a financial practice which helps me so I can do this, which is the old Jim Rohn thought, you feed your family during the day, you work on your fortune at night. This is me working on what I consider to be my fortune. This is me being me. Writers who do that, you almost have to have a gig in place to be able to afford to get into it, or it's some people saying it's a rich man's game to get into writing, which is such a shame, because so much good writing comes from the struggle and the ideas of how you're getting there. This episode today talking about you guys getting hired and the struggle to get hired and the adversity and the victory overcoming the adversity is beautiful. And you want to foster a place where writers can write and they can get paid to write, they can feed their family to write, and seeing all these sentiments that are there right now. I know that you have a unique perspective talking about this. How important is this part of where entertainment is right now with what the writers are going through?
I'll say, like, because I want to just to push back on one part of that and to explain. Like, I feel like first of all, like I don't I'm always hesitant to say and to even suggest that I struggled in getting this job, because I really was like, I look at my biography and like I'm just so aware of like how lucky Craig and I got just to like it did not take us long to get a job, and it's also like it like there's a great book that David Lynch wrote about creativity. God, what's it called? It's like Finding the Bigger Fish, or
we'll get it in a second.
I'm gonna look it up right now. I'm forgive me while I Google here.
No, not at all. Scott Ryan, who wrote The Last Days of Letterman,
Catching the Big Fish.
He's a huge Twin Peaks guy, and he's right in that world right now. He just released a book about Lost Highway. What was the book of David Lynch's book?
It's Catching the Big Fish.
Catching the Big Fish. Okay.
And it's a great book on creativity, and anyone should read it. And it deals with transcendental meditation and like all this thing. But he makes one really great point in it that I think just like really nails it, where he talks about the idea that like there's this conceit that great art comes from suffering, and that and that it's just factually not the case. Like you have to, he says that he talks about like he writes, you know, some of the things that he creates and the things he writes are horrifying. Like just like
Yes.
horrifying images and stories and terrible things happening. But when he goes to work, he goes to work with joy in his heart. And he goes to and he says like you can't and also oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the name of the comedian. She had the great special Nanette. Was that what it was called? Gosh. I'm so why do I not remember names anymore? I'm getting old, I guess.
Well, that's
Hannah
what
Gadsby.
happens to us.
Hannah Gadsby. She
Yeah,
had the great where she talked about just the idea of like this connection between like depression and art and how we link those things together as though they're important to each other when in fact like depression prevents art and like Van Gogh wouldn't have painted his masterpieces if he didn't have his brother to take care of him. Like we would have gotten so many more masterpieces if he hadn't been struggling with depression and the point being like I feel like I just want this is all coming around to the idea that like we as writers like as a writer but even more importantly I think as a fan of television and of writing and of art like I just want to see artists supported. I want to see artists not worrying about how they're going to pay their rent so they can worry about how they're going to solve act 2. You know, I just that's all anybody wants and it's so like the reason why I bring this back to myself is like I had Craig's mom taking care of me. Like she gave me a place to stay and like will forever be grateful to that. And I had my own parents who like were supporting me and taking care of me and like if I had to spend 5 years trying to break in, which could have happened, it could have that could have been the way I don't know if I would have been able to do it. And I just the problem that we're facing as writers is that it used to be like you get the job at Letterman or you get the job on whatever your first job is and it's your foot in the door. It's your big break and now you're getting a regular paycheck and you can stop worrying about all that other stuff and start like focusing on how do I build to the next level? How do I get up to the next level? And people are instead more and more just stuck on this hamster wheel of never advancing because you know all these I mean part of it is just the nature of the business has changed and that you don't have 22 episode orders for sitcoms anymore. Now it's you know you get it's 6 scripts and that's it and like it just kind of creates this environment where people never feel comfortable and I feel like you have to like to create good art you have to feel comfortable. You have to feel like you're gonna be okay and you've chose and you know I even like I'm a very strong supporter of my union and I just in unions in general I believe every man woman and other in America in the world should be in a union. I think unions are a good thing. I think they get a bad name. They get a you know they're given a bad name by bad actors wanting to prevent people from taking their own destiny in their hands as a collective.
Everyone should be supported
Yes.
and rallied around and encouraged and have someone to represent and represented. Yes.
And I feel like, and I also feel like there are some people that go to a place of like this dogmatic, like it's the right thing to do. And I almost feel like this is where it's like we are in a capitalist society, and like part of me just feels like it's set aside whether it's the right thing to do or not. It's the thing we can do and we should do to take care of our own. And it's the thing that like it's like you know use the leverage we have because someone else is going to snatch it up. I think there are people. Hollywood is divided into 2 camps, I think, of people who come here to make art and people who come here to make money. And like the problem is the people who come here to make money get very good at making money and they get very good at taking advantage of the people who come here to make art. And so I just want to like just however many nickels we can get away from the people here to make money and get them into the pockets of the people here to make art just makes for a better Hollywood. So
Don says your talent produces art, and I mean yes, and you think about you know the projects that you have been a part of that are synonymous with your name when you think about this. The talent that was there, the collaborative talent, everyone around, from the people in front of the camera and behind the camera, both these franchises that we're talking about today, your franchise of How I Met Your Mother, and congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
What a roaring success for both you and Craig, and I hope to say it to Craig in person one day. And then of course being on this legendary, run on Letterman, you're talking about this collaboration where there's talent in every single department that produces this, that collaborates and produces this art. You said that very, very well. You also have moved into, you wrote a novel, and I mean, I'm an author myself. I know what it's like to read a book. I didn't write a novel though. But The Mutual Friend, a romantic comedy of a novel, and I love that. I don't know if we're gonna get time to talk to ASAP. Okay, we've got I've still got all sorts of stuff I want to ask you. We'll do that the next time. We'll get some specific bits and start reminiscing and doing all that.
Sure.
You've shot a Walter. You've had the Walter treatment. He's come to see you.
I did. I got the Walter treatment. Yeah, awesome. I haven't seen a cut of that yet. I'm very very nervous to see how I come across, but
oh my gosh, yeah. Your money, you're $1 million. You're awesome. Right, you're going to come across great. I can't wait to see the moments. And yeah, again, this is just blossoming right here. We're going to turn the Craig and Carter thing and their mark on Letterman. We're going to talk a lot more about this as the lifespan of the Letterman podcast moves forward. So don't worry, everybody. I know we're moving to the end here, but we want to talk about The Mutual Friend, because now you get to this place where you're on the other side of projects like How I Made Your Mother and all this, and you've got some stretching room, some breathing room where you can start doing some of these things that aren't motivated by feeding your family necessarily, but have always been there. Has a book always been there, or did that come along as you were in the process of building your career?
I think it had always been there. I was really into writing fiction in college, and then as soon as TV writing became a thing, that sort of eclipsed fiction for me, and I knew that I wanted to work in television, and I got a solid 20 years out of it, and it was great. and I but then after How I Met Your Mother ended, it's sort of, it was like sort of the sun moved away from the moon, and suddenly there was the moon again, and I think I had felt like I had reached a point where because it is the joy of television is collaboration and working with this company of artisans and actors and clowns and jugglers. Like, it's just that it's so fun. It's so fun being in that world. But especially when you're running the show, it can wear you down the way that you have to go through the song and dance every time to get the person with the money to part with their money to let you make the thing. I mean, that's in every version of pitching boils down to that. It's like prying open someone's wallet to tell and you can't tell your story until you've convinced someone to spend the money to help you tell your story, because cameras are expensive and actors are expensive. And I think after a few years, with How I Met Your Mother, it was such a just a conveyor belt from our brains onto television. It was so great that it was just we could just any idea we had, we barely had enough ideas. You could say that maybe we didn't have enough ideas, every idea we did have made it onto the show, and was wow. And so that was such a joy and such a gift. And that's why, I think initially we said we'll do this will be a 7-season show, and it ended up being a 9-season show. Purely because when are we going to get this chance again? Totally selfishly, I love this job. I love these people. When are we going to get this chance again? And then when that ended, it really became clear, you were back to square one now. And getting someone to we made a bunch of pilots, we wrote pilots, and one of the pilots we wrote actually was The Mutual Friend. And it started that way. Craig and I were developing it as a TV show, and it just it didn't sell. And we kept and every time you write a pilot on spec, you're writing chapter 1 of a story, and you want to fall in love with these characters that you're writing about, because why write about something if you don't love it? And yet you would write chapter 1 and then no one wants to buy it, so it's okay, there's no chapter 2. Whatever storyline you've set up for these characters now will just like, it's just a dud. It's just not
Yeah.
going to happen. And I just with the mute, and I there were some of them were heartbreaking, some of them not so much, but each one of them I was able to leave behind, and I was able to say, okay, well, that on to the next one. But with the mutual friend, these characters were all like kind of versions of myself, and it was something that it was very personal to me, and I really like, I at the center of the book, the whole book is about a young woman named Alice who wants to become a doctor, and so she has to spend the summer studying for her MCAT so she can go to medical school.
Yep.
But the problem is she's addicted to her phone, and there's all these crazy things in her life, and it's about her trying to focus on just doing this one thing over the course of a summer. And we set that up in the pilot, and I just wanted to see her do it. I wanted to, like, it was kind of like, I don't want to just leave Alice just out there floating in the universe not becoming a doctor. I want to see if she can pull it off. And so with Craig's blessing, I went and turned it into a novel, and that's and then in doing, like, that was the initial driving force, was just, I can't tell this story as a TV show because I can't get anyone to pay for it. So
Right.
I'm gonna have to tell the story as a book.
Yep.
But then sort of the magical thing that happened for me was I then kind of went off into the wilderness of fiction writing.
Yeah.
I'd been reading a lot because I wasn't able to read a lot of fiction while I was working on How I Met Your Mother, just because I was so busy.
Yep.
And sort of rediscovered my love of fiction. And the more I started working on it, I realized, like, oh, this was supposed to be a book. This was never supposed to be a TV show. This is a book. And the way I can say all these things that I want to say about technology and about family and about ambition and spirituality, like, this is the best format for it. And it ended up being this wonderful sort of 3 or 4 year adventure for me of just like, and it's so different from writing television because it's just going into a room alone.
Yeah.
Just me, and I would have like a little candle burning and just say, like, all right, I got to write 1,000 words today. Let's do it. And high five myself, and here we go. So it was a wonderful adventure in that sense. But yeah, that's how the book came to be. And now it's got me like, I have other TV things in mind that I want to do, but and there's a few that I'm very excited about, but I also, like, I don't know, I want to get back to fiction because I really enjoyed that process.
So okay, and now this could be one of those, like, the possibilities. I just love the possibilities and talking about them. Now that this is a book and it's out there, and I hope a lot of people, or the right people, I hope the audience that you need to find with this book finds it, and quickly. I hope that happens for you. I know that is an art in itself of getting the right piece of art in front of the right person. That's a difficult thing sometimes, but the idea of the romantic comedy in a book, I love that. Now, that being said, you are in the television business, you are in the arts and entertainment business, and now that this is out there, I mean, how many shows are adapted? How many films are adapted from a piece that's out there? If somebody came along and said to you, okay, let's adapt this, or let's continue this, with these characters, but let's not do it in a book form. Let's do it in a TV series. Is that something that you would ever do with this book? Or is this book so personal that you're like, no, I don't want anybody to mess with it. I don't want to collaborate.
No, it's funny because we used to joke all the time about, because the pilot pitching process was always the same thing, and it is always, it's always like, you think of a pilot and you create this, like, oh, this is a TV show unlike anything anyone's ever done before.
Yeah, we're gonna change the world.
Good. You pitch it, and inevitably you pitch it to some studio, and they're like, oh, that's good, not for us, but really good work. But there's this magazine article from Esquire that we have paid $500,000 for, and we want you to turn it into a TV show. And like, it's always IP is like, it has to be, and it's just this psychology of like, as long as someone before me has given this a rubber stamp and has given it a thumbs up and said, like, hey, I like this enough to print it in my magazine, or I like it enough to print it then the dominoes start falling, and it's like, okay, now we're willing to take a chance on this idea because someone else has said yes, so my ass is covered. And so it was always just sort of a running joke where it's like, if you have a great idea for a TV show, the worst thing you can do is pitch it as a pilot. The best thing you can do is either write it as a book or go to Israel and make it as a TV show there. Because like Israeli formats, like I don't know if it's still the case, but or like Norwegian formats, like they love buying like the show that someone else took a chance on in another country, and so it's always like, just tell your story in some other format and then make it a TV show. And that was
That's
kind of
hilarious. I did not know that. I had no idea about that. I'm glad you brought that up today. That is a fun fact that I'm going to dive down a rabbit and turn into a rabbit hole. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's I don't even like begrudge the industry for thinking that way. I mean, it's just it
is what it is.
Yeah, and again, you have to always think of it in terms of like you are asking someone to give you millions of dollars. Like it's not millions of dollars of their money necessarily, but they are the as the executive, they are the steward of that. They are the keeper of the keys to that bank, and like they don't just hand it over. You have to like have some sort of like assurance that like this will be good. So that's an easy way to get that assurance. So the point being, like, we sort of have always had joked about like, oh, next time we should like create some IP, and as it happened, that's sort of what's happened with this, because we wrote this pilot and it was we were very proud of it, and it didn't sell. I turned it into a novel. I wrote the novel, and now like we have the pilot back in development, and it's actually, I mean, I don't know if I can talk about it, but it's in the works, and
awesome.
And so it'll be eventually. It's funny because I'm like, and just to like really like pull back the curtain on it, like I've enjoyed going back to it, and re-exploring it as a pilot, but it's also, there's part of me that feels like now that I've done the book, like I've told the story. It's hard, like rewriting scenes that I spent so long on, that I've been writing for 8 years. So there's part of me that feels like maybe I'm now not the guy to do it, but I will happily do it if given the opportunity.
Well, that's why I asked, because I mean, at the end of the day, these characters, and I don't know if you thought like a TV writer as you were writing it for part of it, where you just couldn't help but, cast it, and have these characters in your mind, and they solidify, and then the adventures they go on, and you don't know what your 1,000 words are going to be that day. And you can get surprised by them by the end of that day. And you've developed, it becomes such a personal thing. Do you want to collaborate on it now, because it is so personal, and these are interesting feelings that you get to kind of negotiate and learn about yourself doing.
Yeah, but although I will say, like, part of me is like, I'm the thing I'm most excited for is to find some other writers to bring into this process, because I definitely
cool.
I love collaborating, and I feel like I've told my version of it, so like why should I hate when TV adaptations for things and movie adaptations are just like rigid by the book, because if you've read the book, it's like I don't need to see that version of it. I want to see someone take something and go somewhere crazy with it. Like I felt like I think about like the like Anthony Minghella's adaptation of The Talented Mr. Ripley. Like if you go back and read the book, almost none of that is in it. Like he took this and like, instead of just like faithfully adapting like every scene, here's exactly what happened, he added characters, he added all this wonderful dialogue, he used it as a springboard to tell something new, to tell, and that's the first example that comes to mind, but there's plenty of others. So what I would love is for someone else who isn't me, and isn't just coming to this with a sense of like, well, this is who I think Alice is, and this is who I think Bob is, and blah blah blah, like someone to read the book and say, this is 70% of what I want to say, and then here's another 30% that's not in the book but is just coming from me. I would love to. I look forward to that part of the storytelling process, because I don't know, I that's TV is collaboration, and I miss that. So
Carter, I swear to God, this is one of the most profound things I've heard in talking to writers, and I love talking to writers. I make no bones about that, because I've only really heard the other side of the argument. Shawshank Redemption was so good because it was 98% what King's novella was, and I've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of loving a book so much and then going to see it in the theater and going, oh yeah, but they change, like, and I have this rigidness in my head. To hear that side of it and to hear a creator say that side of it is nothing short of blowing me away. Like, I love hearing you say that. That's not what you would necessarily think the creator would want, to have someone come in and monkey around with it a little bit. But you're talking about no, let's collaborate on it, let's improve it, let's let's morph it. I love that.
I think it's just it's like I don't know, I there's a joy in like being just a part of a chain of this chain of creativity that like and being like knowing that you're just like part of a bigger working organism. And I don't know, I it's I'm not precious about. Part of it is that like I got to write the book, and I got to like do the version of this that is like exactly what I want it to be.
Yep.
So it just feels boring to me to like hang on to that. I sort of feel like that's not, no adaptation to this could ever take that away from me. Like the words are printed on paper, and like once they're there, that's forever. So like, let's see something new. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's, you know, yeah. I feel that. I'm trying to think of like, would there be an example of something that like, well, don't do that, you know? But like, I don't know.
Like I'm thinking of Ready Player One to make your point right now. Like the book Ready Player One and then the film Ready Player One, you know, very different animals, but very the same, like in the same tone. But the, you know, the details were changed around, in my opinion, for the medium. And you know, the film of Ready Player One, very different. I love that. I'm going to look at things very differently having this conversation today. So I just appreciate you talking about this. Okay, we are almost 2 hours. I know I want to get out. I don't want to get out. I could go another hour with you. I'm trying to be as conscious of your time as I can.
Yeah.
But here's it. If I have my way, that we can manifest a little bit, here's how it's going to go. Hopefully I can get a chance to talk to Craig, and have him on here. And then I would love to have you both on here. I'd love to have you back to talk about some of these bits, but anyway, that's how I'd love to see. I hope you're open to that.
Yeah. Sure. That'd be great.
But Don asked you a question before we hit the record button, and I think it's a beautiful way to button things up a little bit.
Oh yeah. Okay.
The legacy that you have at Letterman, which we're going to talk about more later on, everybody, you know, don't get mad at us. We're just building rapport right now. Everybody, come on. We're going to talk about more late show moments. We will. This legacy that you built, you know, then you and Craig left, made your fortune. The night of the last Letterman, you know, May 20th, 2015, you know, you were at the show. I would love to talk about that, what that experience was like, the surreality of it. I don't know if you went to the Friars Club afterwards or not, but I would love to talk about, that.
Oh yeah, that was such a wonderful little moment. Did you say 2014? Was that when it was? It was
2015, May 20th, 2015. Yeah.
Okay, right. Yeah. So I'd been back in New York for about a year. That it was like not long after How I Met Your Mother ended.
Yep.
But yeah, it was just wonderful. It was a wonderful little like class reunion of all these people that I hadn't seen in years and years. And I was still good friends with a couple of them. I was still friends with Tommy and Lee, and I knew Joe. Joe started right after we left, and
Joe Grossman.
Like, yeah,
he's one of my favorite humans. Yeah,
he's delightful. I wish we had worked together because he's really funny. Yeah, it was just such a delight to get to just go back and I was in the old writers' room where like so many, where my writing career began, like what and watching the show the way we used to watch it for 4.5 years, which is like sitting around eating takeout from one of the local takeout places, sitting around this big conference room, and there's the table, there's the TV at the end of the table, and we would all just, you know, watch the mayhem ensue that we spent, you know, the day writing, or not me in that case. In that case, I was just a guest, but yeah, it was the perfect way to end it for me. It was so nice to go back to that, and I thought it was such a great final episode. And like, I remember thinking earlier in the week, like, I wonder if the Foo Fighters are going to come out and play Everlong, because I just thought, like, I know that's Dave's favorite song, and like the CBS Orchestra plays it. I wonder if that'll happen. Probably not. And then as soon as it was like, oh, perfect,
right,
perfect, yeah. And yeah, it was just a great night. And then going to the Friars Club and seeing all
Well,
these people
I
that
think
hadn't
it's the Museum
seen.
of Modern Art, actually. The Friars Club, I think, was a few weeks beforehand. Or do I have it reversed?
Oh, was it? Oh, I can't.
I might have it reversed.
It's so long
I
ago.
might have my,
I
it all
vividly
blurs
remember
together.
the Friars Club just because I remember I'd never been there, and it was just fun,
Oh,
like
yeah,
going to this place that we'd heard all these legendary stories about.
yeah.
Um, and just seeing like a combination of seeing people that I hadn't worked with in forever, that was always exciting, but then also like meeting people that that who had also whose work I so respected, but I hadn't actually overlapped with. Like I met Casey St. Ange when I was there, and
Isn't she amazing?
she's delightful, and we
She's
had
one of my
never
favorite
actually
humans,
met.
too.
I don't think. I mean, we might have met like at some other,
It
but
would have
like
been really
it was
brief.
like
She
that
went
was
to
the first time we like
Rosie.
had a conversation in person. Like we'd
Yeah.
gotten to know each other, like I think like parasocially, as they say on like Twitter and stuff. But like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it was just delightful. It was such a like and there was so much love in the room. It was really and it's I without I don't want to like I don't want to paint an untrue picture, because like like with any place there is angst, and there are
Oh,
things about working there that are like that I'm not going to talk about, and probably
yeah.
most people you talk about so won't talk about,
No.
just because like it's water on the bridge now.
Yeah.
There were difficult moments about working at Letterman. It was a challenging place to work.
Yeah.
It was a place where a lot of like uh, uh, emotions got very hot sometimes,
Absolutely.
all in the interest of putting on a great show. But like
Absolutely.
uh it was just lovely going back and having this moment with all these people that was just purely
None of that shit mattered
appreciative
at
and
that point.
grateful and joyful and
Yep.
and happy, and just a big hug. And it was I think it was therapeutic for a lot of people, because for people who might have left, Will Forte was there actually. Like we got to hang out with Will that night, which was really fun. And like I don't know, I think it was the button everyone who'd ever worked at Letterman needed to just like put a capper on the experience and say goodbye.
We talk about it like it's the Pants family, and we use that word intentionally because it was a family. And when you think about, like, I think about members of my family, like, and the stuff that's happened over time with family, and there's always drama and there's always stuff that goes on and things like that. But then when it boils down to, if somebody attacks a member of your family, it could be two brothers that just are at odds with each other every day. But if one brother sees the other brother being picked on, well, that's a different story entirely. And that's why that word is used clearly, and we don't focus on that stuff on this show. When the camera goes off, I've obviously, things get talked about and all that kind of stuff, but why focus on that? And that night, you guys being able to have that night, there was a lot of therapy that night for a lot of different people in that room. I love knowing that for many there is resolution, some of which that was years in the making, and so I'm really grateful to hear that. We talk about Scott's book, The Last Days of Letterman, all the time on this show, because to me, I don't know about you, I don't know where yours is, but we're of similar times and places and cultures and all that. That last 6 weeks of Letterman to me is the golden age of TV. I just love that run the last 6 weeks, because there was so much of what you're talking about. You guys got it on a personal level that night at the party, but we as the audience, got to see so much resolution, so much celebration and culmination. I loved that. I love that you're a part of it. And again, I'm not trying to embarrass in any way, shape, or form, but one of the things that I say specifically to the writers, this show was with me since I was in elementary school. The late shift stuff happened right in my formative years, at the end of high school. And so it solidified itself, and I became Mr. Team Dave guy. And I watched every single night. I watched through my own personal ups and downs, go through a divorce and all that stuff. Guess what? Dave's still there every single night. 9/11, like you talked about, these big world events that have happened. You, sir, helped to create some of the gray matter pathways within my brain, and I cannot thank you enough for it. And that is right from my heart, Carter. I am so grateful for everything that you have done as part of the collaboration. And then, of course, the stuff that you've done outside as a result of that collaboration. Thank you for being you. Thank you for everything that you've done.
Mike, I appreciate that so much, and I really like I can't express enough how much, and I'm so glad that Don is here to hear this too, because I'll say like it part of that era of television that among the many things that differentiate it from how it is now is that nowadays you get so much interaction with your audience, like doing How I Met Your Mother and just like the Twitter feed, like just constantly like somebody in Alaska that saw your show can say, "Hey, that was funny," or "Hey, you guys totally screwed that up." Like you get so much input and so much and like there it was so much more challenging then, and I bring up Don because like one of the like Craig and I running the mailbag,
Yep.
like it was a we were one of the only two writers. I mean, all the writers, like our only way of like really like interacting with the audience was these letters because they were real. They were real viewer mail letters, and a number of them were often from Mr. Don Giller, and like and there were a few times I think when we even and Don's you can correct me on this where we like maybe even like if we had an idea for like a mailbag letter, we would say like, is there a Don's letter in there somewhere that could set up this idea that we have? And sure
Oh,
enough, there would
that's
be because he would
cool.
send us so many. But it really was like I say all this because there, even though our access to the audience was limited compared to the way it is now, there
Yes.
was constantly an awareness that like this show is a conversation with our audience and with specifically with the knuckleheads who watch it every night and who like stay up late to watch it and who like genuinely care about it and love these characters like Biff Henderson and Alan
Yep.
Coulter and Tony
Yep.
Mendez.
Oh, Alan.
Like
Yeah.
it was just, I mean, that was that it was and it came from a place of us starting out as fans as well and being fans of, I mean, I like Letterman was much more a thing for Craig, I think, than for me. Like I came to it a little later, but like it's the same thing. It was just like you know as a fan how much these shows mean to you, and so you want to like you want to do that justice, do that idea justice, and so yeah, thank you for letting us create. I mean, the we have the same neural pathways because it did the same for me.
Well, I appreciate that very, very much. I can't wait to get into more of this stuff with you. Speaking of Don, he just sent this picture. I don't know if you can see that.
Is that the
It's at the Hello Deli.
That's the Hello Deli. Okay, yeah, that was right at the after the finale or around that time. And now Rupert's retiring. Are you going to talk to Rupert?
Well, okay. So, and this is the part that I love revealing because of the smile. There is no better smile than this. The Letterman podcast, we have one sponsor. And it's by design. Like this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is my internship. I want to work for Pants. I want to do this for Pants. That's what's going on here. They're very well aware of that. They would like me to stop saying that as many times as I do, but I won't stop. But we do have one sponsor here at the Letterman podcast and one sponsor only, and that is Rupert G and the Hello Deli. He is a great friend of the show. After a few episodes, he reached out and said, "No, I would love to sponsor your show." And he and I have become great friends over this time. Absolutely. So, by the way, we'll do the commercial right now. If you want to get any licensed Late Show with David Letterman merchandise, there's only one place that you can do that. That's at the Hello Deli. Go to hello-deli.com. Get your mug, get your shirt, whatever that is. Rupert stuff. If you ask really nicely, Rupert will add onions to your order. He packs them himself. And how awesome is Rupert? And how crazy is it that the deli is up for sale?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy, and I'm sure there's more than one person who's tempted to like look at their finances and think like, is there any way? It's crazy. Right? I'm like, you watch the show and you think like, oh, that's the like I don't think it comes across what an actual part of the Letterman organism the Hello Deli was. I ordered lunch from there every day. Yep. I shouldn't say I bought cigarettes there back when I was a smoker. Like it was, and I would get my morning coffee there. Like it was, and like Rupert and May. I feel like May is behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
She doesn't get as much. She wasn't out there, with the earpiece like making a jackass of herself. But Rupert and May were both wonderful. Just sort of it was the cafeteria of the whole building, and everyone would meet there, and everyone would and they took such good care of us. So yeah,
that's
very grateful for them.
God, Carter, this has been great. Please stick around for a second after I do the outro here. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we finish your first appearance on the Letterman podcast?
I can't imagine there is.
Okay.
I feel like I've said a lot. So,
oh God,
but
this
yeah,
has been
just that
gold.
I'm grateful to be here, and this was a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. And thank you for the moment we reached out to you and you said, oh, this is a great thing you're doing. Anytime someone who worked for the production says that to me, I take that right to heart. I think it is too. And you know, your support in saying that means the world to me. Yeah, so please stick around for a moment after I hit stop here, but I will do the outro and we'll go from there. Holy cow, everybody. This is another one of those episodes that just, I mean, you know, I can't act worth a darn. It's coming out of me like crazy, the joy that I get from this stuff. I certainly love the fact that I'm not alone, and watching this audience grow, watching this show grow, what it is that we're doing. As Mr. Carson said, more to come. Let's just add the word much more to come. That has been another episode of the letter. Oh, go get The Mutual Friend. Go find wherever you find your books. Go get Carter Bay's book, The Mutual Friend. Check it on out. There we go. So as always, this has been another episode of the Letterman podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. Thank you and good night.
Overcoat and underpants.